Hey there, I am running so late. Got distracted chatting with a customer about the upcoming Celsius vote that is happening this week. There's a vote about whether or not we want to accept the bankruptcy recovery plan and all this sort of thing. And so we were just chatting about our options. And today I thought we could talk about, hey, guess what's coming up? It is time for the USA investors to have their taxes due. In other words, if you filed an extension in April and said, I don't want to deal with my taxes right now, I will do them before October 15th, that time is now. And if you are not sure what to do about your crypto taxes because it's all very confusing, then this is a good time to ask questions and to figure out what the heck you're doing. So that's why we're here today. We actually wrote a blog post all about this subject in our brand new blog, which has gone live this week, and we're very excited about it. It talks about some of the things you need to know about the tax extension deadline, the penalties for not reporting your taxes and not paying your taxes on time, what's worse, what do you do if you're in a situation where you have a lot to report or whatever. Because there are people out there, I mean, usually we get the complaints about people saying, I don't have any gains, why would I need to report taxes? I think we talked about that in a recent live about why it's so important to report your losses. Not just because you don't want to give the government more money than you have to, but, taking advantage of every loophole and strategy there is out there to reduce your current taxes and using that silver lining of your losses to offset the taxes. So there's that. If you haven't reported your crypto before, it's really important to start reporting your crypto because the first question on the USA tax form is, have you received any crypto or have you sold any crypto or digital currency? If you are check marking, no, of course I haven't, and then later it turns out you did, you could be subject to fines and penalties. And this is why you should absolutely take steps to at least say, yes, I did have some. And if you're too scared to figure out what you did, because that doesn't really commit you to anything yet. Of course, if you have only bought crypto, if you haven't sold any crypto, which is a little bit hard, but if you have only been putting money into the exchange and buying Bitcoin, you don't need to report anything yet. And so you don't need to mark that checkbox. But if you have at any point traded one crypto for another crypto, which is very easy when you get your money in there and you convert it all to USDT and then you trade that USDT for Bitcoin. Ta-da! Now you have something to report on your taxes. So it boils down to what is the most important things that you need to know before the tax deadline comes up. There's a couple things. And we always tell our clients, there's different levels, right? There are those of you out there who do owe taxes on some of your capital gains. And what that means is you had enough gains that you have to pay taxes. Duh. Okay. But what if you haven't reported it yet? So the first thing we always say is, number one, turn something in for your taxes. There's a couple of different penalties for not reporting your taxes and not reporting them on time. The biggest penalty, the 5% a month penalty, failure to file. This is the biggest error you can have. Failure to file penalty amounts to 5% of the unpaid tax liability for each month that the tax return is late, up to 25% of the balance due. So what that means is, if you don't even turn in a tax form, you are going to owe 5% of your taxes for each month that you don't turn it in, up to 5 months. At 5 months, you max out. So if it's been more than 5 months and you haven't filed your taxes, I wouldn't rush about it because you're going to have that full penalty anyways. But if you have the opportunity to file something, that reduces your penalties and buys you a little time. So the next big penalty is the failure to pay. Failure to pay is 0.5% of the unpaid tax liability each month that the taxes are unpaid, up until it reaches 25% again. What this means is, if you don't know what your balances are and you're not sure, it's much, much better to turn in a tax form that you can amend and that you can fix later, or to file an extension and say, okay, I'm going to file it. In the meantime, you're racking up 0.5% penalties on your taxes, which isn't as bad. It does eventually max out to the full 25% again. And actually, if you fail to pay and you fail to file, Then I think I read that they actually add like 22% and 25% penalties. So you actually owe 47% on top of what you owed before. You know, people wonder why I help people with their crypto taxes instead of helping people avoid reporting to the government, because everyone's like, oh, crypto, it's all about, stick it to the man. And we don't need to pay our taxes because we're in crypto and they're never going to find out and whatever. And it's like, okay, personally, I don't want to get caught. I am enough of a rule follower that I don't want to get caught. I don't want to pay another 45% of my taxes owed because I defied the government and refused to pay and refused to file. And there might be a point in my life when I get to that point and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take it. I'm going to just move as far into the wilderness as possible, lock myself up in my little cave, never talk to anyone again. And if the government comes asking, pretend they don't exist or something. Maybe I'll be like that someday. But right now I am living in the center of America and I'm a U.S. citizen. So I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to file my taxes. I'm going to pay them. And again, if you don't know what you owe, it's infinitely preferable to at least say, I'm going to file them while you have that automatic extension, because it's really easy to file an automatic extension between April and October. But that gives you enough time that hopefully by October you've figured out what you actually owe. If you still haven't figured it out, now the clock does start in April for the taxes due. So that means if you haven't paid anything into the system or enough into the system, you are going to owe this failure to pay penalty. In addition, if you miscalculate and you haven't had enough taxes withheld from your income, or you haven't had enough paid into the system with estimated taxes or credits or whatever else, and you're going to owe a payment, you are supposed to pay interest on that payment. I believe it's equal to the federal short-term rate plus 3% for most individuals. So that means that could rack up pretty quickly too, which is how people get in real trouble if they don't report their taxes, because they've got the failure to pay, they've got the failure to file, they've got the interest, and it's all adding up. And in the meantime, why did they not report their taxes? Usually it's because they don't have the money to pay them, or they don't want to face the money to pay them, or whatever. This is why we always say at least make a guess. In April, before the April 15th filing deadline, make a guess to what you owe. Make sure you've paid enough into the system by then that hopefully it'll cover what you need to pay, so you don't have interest and all that stuff on top of your tax bill to pay. The other thing that not a lot of people know is that if you are within a certain percentage of last year's payments and last year's income, that you also will not have penalties that way. So what that means for me is that some years I have a really good trading year and some years I don't have such a good trading year. Last year I did not have a good trading year, so I got a big refund back. And what that means is it kind of resets. So my reported income was a lot lower this last year, which means that as long as I pay enough taxes to cover a certain percentage over last year's taxes, and I forget what the exact number is, but you can ask an accountant or a tax preparer to figure it out for you. Something like within 5% or something. So you pay like 105% of last year's income taxes. Then if you miscalculate or you have a really good year and it's like, oh, whoops, I forgot to pay enough into the system, at least you don't have interest payments if you pay it by April 15th. So what I'm actually referring to is the penalty for underpayment of your taxes. So if you file your taxes and it turns out you didn't pay enough into the system, you got to make sure that you've at least paid in by the deadline that 105% of whatever you paid last year, so that you don't get extra penalties and fines and all that sort of thing. Failure to pay and failure to file are actually different. It's important to try to guess when you're filing your taxes in April, or if you're filing an extension, try to guess how much you're going to owe. Get some kind of guesstimate on all of your income, all of your expenses, all of your deductions and things, so that you can be pretty close. And if you're not sure, pay a little more in than you think you should, because it's much better to get a refund than to get penalties and fines because you didn't pay enough. That's my view on the thing. Now, what happens if you put together your taxes and you realize that you have like a huge tax bill and you don't know how to pay it, and now what? So the IRS really does want to get as much money as possible out of you. So if you are in a situation where there's no honest way that you can pay all those taxes and you're just going to get farther and farther behind, it's a really good idea to reach out to a tax advocate or to the IRS itself and make some kind of deal. They can give you a payment plan. They can give you some way of forgiving some of it as long as you pay the rest of it and such and so on. So really important to be proactive and get that taken care of so you don't have even more fines and penalties racking up. If you miss the October 16th deadline, this year it's October 16th because as usual it's a federal holiday or a weekend or something, so that always bumps the tax due day by a day or two. And if you miss filing by October 16th, you will trigger a failure to file penalty. So whatever you do, get your taxes done on time. If it's going to be me, if I'm going to put them off till the last minute, something's going to go really wrong and I will not have them actually filed. There will be something, the software doesn't work, my accountant's too busy, whatever. So try to get the taxes in, like, now. Give yourself like a week leeway so you don't get really stressed out the night before trying to fill out these things. And the deadline is at midnight local time, but definitely want to make sure it's taken care of. State taxes are usually due at the same time as federal taxes, but definitely check and see if you can figure that out. What forms do you need? Oh my goodness. So when you are filing taxes in the US, you definitely need to file your 1040. Anything related to crypto is going to go onto your 8949 for your capital gains trades and things. And then there's income that might need to be reported on different schedules like Schedule A or B or Schedule 1 or something. If you've been doing mining, you might need to file a Schedule C and report self-employment and all of that stuff. Definitely consult with a tax preparer or with a crypto tax expert if you need help figuring out what you need to report that's crypto related. We're specialists in that, so we can tell you exactly what you need to do for that part. And then you can take it all in a pretty package to your actual preparer or filer, or you can use TurboTax or any of the tax softwares out there and load in the information yourself. Definitely start early enough. Definitely make sure you've been paying your estimated taxes and definitely get your taxes filed on time. It's so important if you want to miss all those penalties, all that stuff. Like I said, I'm a rule follower, but mostly because that sounds really painful to pay an extra 50% on top of whatever I owe if I refused to file. I'm not at that point in my life, so I'm going to file on time and I'm going to pay on time. But I'm going to use every loophole and every way around and out of taxes that I can. And that means if I had losses last year, which I did, I'm going to report those because that reduces my gains and that reduces my taxes. People who stick their head in the sand, it makes me really sad. The people think, oh, I had huge losses, I don't want to face it, so I know that the losses are going to cancel out any taxes I owe or whatever, so they don't even mention it on their taxes. Or maybe they file taxes but they just report their earnings. And I think if the IRS finds out that you didn't report your losses, they're not going to be terribly upset because the losses reduces their income. So if you're not reporting your losses, then they get more income. So they're quite happy to have you not report your losses. But I don't think they will go back and let you change things later if it turns out, I mean, I think you can amend your taxes that you filed. But if you didn't file them, I'm not sure on all the rules about that, but if you didn't file them and then you want to go back and claim all these losses, they don't look very well at that sort of situation. So anyways, get out there, get your taxes done. Now's the time to be figuring out who's going to do your taxes, what information you need to find. If you need to recreate situations from your crypto trading, now's the time to be doing it. And definitely back to the Celsius situation. So Celsius is going through bankruptcy and there is a list of everybody with assets in Celsius. And so if you have assets in Celsius and then if you don't tell the government that you've been buying and selling crypto, I mean, it could still be that the assets in Celsius are all buys and you haven't had any sales, and so maybe you haven't had to report anything yet. But if you have, or if you got those gains in Celsius by trading other crypto and you haven't reported that yet, the government is going to start catching on And there's all this threat of extra IRS agents coming after crypto investors because they think that crypto investors made a lot of money in the last couple of years. Definitely not this year, but in the last couple. And they want a piece of that income that has been denied to them, if it has been denied to them. And they're certainly very willing, from what I've heard, to point fingers and say, you owe us money, and find out later that they were wrong. So, best way to protect against that, report everything. Report it as soon as you can, preferably in the year that it happened, but if you are behind or if you didn't, figure out with a tax accountant or something how you can get back on track so that you can go forward knowing that you're going to be fine. No IRS is going to come after you. Nobody's going to accuse you of, failing to file, failing to pay, all that sort of thing, and bring you huge bills for interest and all that. So that is my opinion today. This is Jessica with Beta Virtual Assistants. I don't think I said that earlier. We are here on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern when I don't get distracted by interesting conversations happening in Slack. And we love to talk about crypto taxes and crypto investing. And if you need help reporting crypto investments, be sure to either check out the link in the comments or contact us. Make an appointment to talk to one of us. If you have questions about your situation, we can help you figure it out. And we're also here on Saturdays talking about strategy, 10 a.m. Eastern. And I think that's it. And I probably have a piano student here, so I need to run. Talk to you later. Bye.